Hello, and welcome back. This is part 2 in the series How to Play Heroclix. If you haven't seen the first video, I'll go ahead and leave a link to the playlist in the info button and the description below. This video is going to cover the remaining rules for Heroclix that we've yet to go over. The remaining subjects that we'll discuss are objects, combat symbols, improved abilities, every single power in the game, and finally, golden and silver rules. So let's just dive into it. Objects are items on the battlefield that can be used both offensively and defensively. There are 3 types of objects in the game: light objects with a yellow ring, heavy objects with a red ring, and special objects. We'll talk more about special objects in a bit. Light objects are small items that any normal human can reasonably carry, including fire extinguishers and bowling balls, while heavy objects are things that you need to have superhuman strength to be able to lift and throw, such as a refrigerator or a tube television? Sure. When your character moves, you can pick up a light object in a square they moved through or adjacent to one they moved through and put it on their card. Similarly, once per move, you can put down an object in the same way. Please note that you can only pick up or put down an object once per move, never both. Your character can also only hold a single object at a time. If you want to pick up a heavy object, you need to have the power Super Strength, which we'll cover in powers and abilities. Objects can also be the targets of destroy actions as if they were blocking terrain. This follows the same rules as destroying blocking terrain, except the object is simply removed from the map. No debris marker is placed down. You also cannot target objects that a character is holding, since technically they're on a character's card and not on the map. You might want to destroy any heavy objects between you and your target, because heavy objects count as hindering for line of fire. If you're carrying an object, you can be given an object action. There are 2 types of object actions: close object actions and range object actions. To perform a close object action, give your character a close action, and make a close combat attack, modifying your damage by +1. To perform a range object action, give your character a range combat action, with a minimum range value of 6. And then you can make a range combat attack targeting a single opposing character. If you hit, deal 2 damage instead of your normal damage. This can be a great option if you have a character with 0 range and you need to attack someone far away or up elevation, since the minimum range for the action is 6. If you perform either of these actions, KO the object. Some objects are indestructible. This means that they cannot be the target of destroy actions, but they will still be KO'd if you use them in an object action. If the object is KO'd, the opponent of the object's owner scores the points equal to the object's value as if it were a character. Objects are also scored if no character on that player's force is left on the map. Some objects are special objects called equipment. Special objects are typically famous items from within their respective universe. Each of these special objects can give your characters unique powers and abilities for as long as they have that object equipped. To equip an object, give a character occupying the same square as the object, or an object they're holding, a power action. The item is then removed from the map and placed on the character card, and is now considered equipped. An object's card will have rules for who can equip it, though most objects just say any for any character. You can also equip heavy items even if you don't have super strength. When a special object is equipped, the character who has it equipped gains the object's effect ability. A character can only have 1 piece of equipment equipped at a time. If you were to equip another equipment onto that character, you would have to unequip the last item they had. Characters also unequip their items if they get KO'd. You can see how to unequip an item on that item's card. The most common of these is drop, which means you place the object in the square the character last occupied. When building your team, you're allowed to take 3 objects of any combination with you. If you choose special objects, make sure to pay their point cost towards your team. Then when placing your force, also place any standard objects outside of your starting area, and any special objects at least 5 squares away from your starting area. Even though special objects don't say it, each special object is considered unique, and you can only have 1 of each special objects on your starting force. However, if you remember, some characters have traits that allow them to bring in objects from outside the game. This can allow you to bring in copies of an object, even though it's unique. For example, if I'm running John Walker Captain America, I can put Captain America's shield as one of my 3 objects and place it on the map. Then, once the game begins, another Captain America shield is brought in from outside the game and equipped to John Walker Captain America immediately. but we can discuss more about uniqueness in another video. Now it's finally time for us to start looking at the Powers and Abilities card, or PAC. The Powers and Abilities card is a reference card that contains all the information about all the different powers, abilities, and key phrases that you might need in a standard game of Heroclix. You can get this a number of ways, but the easiest way is to go onto heroclix.com and download the latest version there. But instead of jumping straight into powers, we're going to take a look at some abilities and key phrases. Let's start with improved abilities. These can be found in this section, split up into two parts, one for movement and one for targeting. Starting with improved movement, we have improved movement elevated terrain. This lets your character ignore elevated terrain for movement purposes. Think of this like Spider-Man climbing up a wall. Improved movement blocking lets your character move through blocking terrain, but they still can't end their movement inside it. This is just like the vision phasing through solid matter. Improved movement outdoor blocking lets you move through blocking terrain, specifically in outdoor maps. Outdoor blocking terrain is kind of like a boulder, while indoor blocking terrain is like a pillar going up to the roof. So ignoring outdoor blocking terrain is like the Human Torch flying over a rock, but he still can't fly through a pillar. Improved movement destroy blocking lets you smash through a wall merely by running through it. No puny wall is going to stop a charge from the Hulk. Improved movement characters lets you automatically break away, and you can move in spaces adjacent to opposing characters without stopping. This might be Deadpool with a teleporter allowing him to blink around. Finally is improved movement move through. This is like improved movement characters, but you still need to break away if you started the move next to an opposing character. Johnny Storm might be able to fly over characters, but if he's engaged with him, he still needs to break away. Now we can take a look at improved targeting. Improved targeting elevated lets a character ignore elevated terrain for drawing lines of fire. You might find this improved ability on a Reed Richards who's targeting a space laser at somebody from afar. Improved targeting hindering means your character's line of fire can never be hindered. You might find this on a Superman who can see through cover that someone might be hiding in. There's also improved targeting blocking, which lets you shoot through blocking terrain. Once again, you might find this on a Mr. Fantastic who's attacking with a space laser and not himself. Improved targeting destroy blocking lets you draw line of fire through blocking terrain and after the action resolves, destroying that terrain. This is found on characters whose attacks are so powerful that they can destroy entire buildings. Improved targeting characters lets you draw line of fire through characters. This Thor might be able to throw his hammer over anyone getting in his way. Improved targeting adjacent lets a character make ranged attacks even if an opposing character is adjacent to them. You'll typically find this power on a skilled marksman. And that's all of the improved abilities. They're all pretty straightforward and can be easily referenced on the back of the PAC. By now, you may have noticed that some characters don't have the 4 combat symbols that I've shown in the past. That's because these combat symbols actually relay information on their own. The boot is the standard movement symbol, but it grants no further effects. The wing symbol grants the flight key phrase. Flight gives a character improved movement elevated, outdoor blocking, and move through, so they don't have to stop if they become adjacent to an opposing character. It also gives them passenger 1 to let them carry one character. The dolphin symbol grants the swim key phrase. If a character can swim and occupies water terrain, opposing characters can't target them unless they're within 4 squares. Think of it like a character diving beneath the waves. Next up are the attack symbols. The standard fist is just that, standard, and it offers no unique advantages. The autonomous symbol is just a backwards fist with a stripe. If a character is autonomous, then their actions don't count towards your action total. You'll typically find these on what are called bystander tokens. These are characters who aren't represented with full dials, but instead are small tokens with a single click of life. For instance, Reed Richards Alpha can summon in additional Reed Richard bystander tokens, each of which is fully autonomous. Next up is the defense shield. If you see an older character whose shield doesn't have a stripe, you can treat them the same as a character with a stripe. These shields are from older versions of the rules, but I thought it was worth bringing them up anyway. The other type of defense symbol is a wheel, indicating that the character is actually a vehicle. But there's a whole swath of rules that come with vehicles, and since vehicles are an occasional oddity and not a HeroClix staple, I'll let you discover those rules on your own. Finally, let's talk about damage symbols. Now, damage symbols actually do more than indicate damage. They actually indicate a character's size. As such, there's 4 size symbols, shown here in ascending order of size. The atom symbol means that the character is tiny. Tiny characters get +1 to defense versus ranged attacks, as they're smaller targets to hit. This means that this character is giant. Giants get Giant Reach 2 and the Giant Size key phrase. Giant Reach X lets you make a close combat attack targeting anyone within X squares in line of fire, ignoring hindering terrain. So a giant character can target any character within 2 squares in line of fire with a melee attack as if they were adjacent. Great Size is a bit more convoluted. First off, Great Size gives a character improved movement elevated, outdoor blocking and move through, and improved targeting adjacent. You can also treat targeting this character as if they were always on the rim of elevated terrain, as if you were shooting up at them, so their line of fire isn't blocked by elevated terrain, outdoor blocking, and is only hindered if they occupy a square of hindering terrain. This also grants them willpower, but they succeed on a 3 through 6 and protected pulse wave. We'll discuss what those two things mean later down the line. If a character is a fist icon, it means they're colossal. Colossal characters gain access to Giant Reach 3 and the Great Size key phrase. Size also affects the rules in a few other ways too. A line of fire is never blocked by a character of a smaller size. When breaking away, a larger character only needs to roll a 3 through 6 to break away instead of the normal 4 through 6. And a character whose 2 sizes larger than the target breaks away automatically. Finally, any character can carry another character of a smaller size. So now between flight and size, I've mentioned carrying twice. So let me give a brief explanation on what carrying is. Before moving, you can choose an adjacent friendly character to carry. After moving, you can place that chosen character in a square adjacent to whoever moved, and then the carried character cannot be given costed actions for the rest of the turn. So for reference, if your character can fly, you can carry one character of the same size. If your character is larger than your target, you can also carry them. However, you cannot carry a character if the moving character or the carrying character are holding an object, but they can have objects equipped. Some effects might refer to standard characters. These are characters that aren't bystandards, have a single 1x1 or peanut 1x2 base, has the standard attack and defense symbol, and is the standard size. A non-standard character cannot be equipped. After all, what use would Galactus have for Captain America's shield? Now it's finally time to start looking at the powers. The Powers and Abilities card has 12 colors for powers, and depending on which slot that color is located, will determine which power that character has. So let's go ahead and jump right in with defense powers. Defense powers do just as their name says. Typically, they're used to prevent your character from taking damage. Red defense is super senses. When this character would be hit, roll a d6, and on a 5 or a 6, that attack becomes a miss instead. Note that critical hits become hit, so they skip over the when this character would be hit step. Orange defense is toughness. This lets you reduce damage by 1 to a minimum of 0. Yellow defense is defend. This lets you replace an adjacent friendly character's defense value with this character's. Light green defense is combat reflexes. This gives your character a +2 defense for close combat attacks. Dark green is energy shield deflection. This is combat reflexes' sister power, granting a +2 defense for ranged attacks. Light blue defense is barrier. With barrier, you can give your character a power action to place up to 4 blocking terrain tokens that are all adjacent to each other with a minimum range value of 6. These barrier markers will be removed at the beginning of your next turn. Dark blue is the nefarious mastermind. When a character with mastermind would be hit, they can instead choose that an adjacent friendly character of lower points or that shares a keyword becomes hit instead. Note that this says would become hit, so critical hits also bypass this power. Purple defense is willpower. Willpower is a character's determination to keep fighting. At the beginning of your turn, roll a d6, and on a 5 to a 6, you can remove an action token from this character. Remember that Great Size grants giant and colossal characters willpower, but they succeed on a 3 through 6, letting them act almost every turn. Jumping around a bit, black defense is regeneration. For a power action, you can roll a d6 and heal your character equal to half the result rounded up. This allows your weakened characters to get back in the fight. Skipping ahead even more, silver defense is invulnerable. It's an upgraded version of toughness, letting a character reduce 2 damage whenever they're hit. Above that, we can see bronze defense is impervious. This is one of the strongest defense powers in the game for reducing damage. It also reduces damage by 2, like Invulnerable, but you can roll a d6, and on a 5 to a 6, you reduce all the damage you take down to 0. You'll find this on the tankiest characters in the game. Going back up, we can see pink defense is Invincible. Invincible acts like Invulnerable, but it can reduce penetrating damage. Now that I've brought up penetrating damage, let me take a moment to touch upon damage types. Heroclix features 3 primary damage types. Normal damage is what you'll deal with most of the time, and you already know how it works. The next type is penetrating damage. Penetrating damage can't be reduced, which means if a character is impervious and you hit them with penetrating damage, then their defense does nothing. This is where Invincible comes in. It's less effective at reducing damage than impervious, but it can reduce penetrating damage. Finally, there's unavoidable damage. Unavoidable damage cannot be ignored, transferred, reduced, or countered in any way. Unavoidable damage is rare, but if you remember, when you take a critical miss, the damage that you take is a single unavoidable damage, and you have to take it no matter what. Now that those 2 are down, let's go ahead and move on to speed powers. A lot of these deal with improving or hampering movement, but you'll find a few miscellaneous abilities in this section as well. Red speed is Flurry. For a close action, it lets you make 2 close combat attacks instead of just 1. Each of these attacks resolves before the next one is made, so be careful of getting 2 critical misses. Orange speed is Leap Climb. This power gives a character a lesser version of flight, letting them ignore elevated terrain, outdoor blocking terrain, and lets them move adjacent to opposing characters without stopping. Yellow movement is Phasing Teleport. For a move action, this lets a character ignore everything for movement and then move. Please note that Phasing Teleport requires a move action to activate, whereas Leap Climb is always active. The light green speed power is Earthbound Neutralize. This is one of the only negative powers in the game. This takes away improved abilities that your character can use. This represents a character temporarily losing their powers. I'll link in the info box in the description a great video by TableTop Teacher explaining this power in more detail. Dark green speed is Charge. This is one of the most important powers in the game. For a power action, half your speed, always rounding up, move, then you can be given a close action as free. Since you're given a close action, you can perform close destroy actions, object attacks, or just make a normal attack, or use any powers that you have that require close actions, like Flurry. Light blue speed is Mind Control. This power requires either a close or a range action to use, but it lets you make an attack against an opposing character. If you hit, instead of dealing normal damage, instead you take control of that character. You then have their movement, and can move and make an attack in any order. Then the character returns to the original force. Dark blue is Plasticity. If you have Plasticity, to break away you only need to roll a 1, and adjacent opposing characters who can't use the powers Phasing Teleport, Plasticity, Leap Climb, or Hypersonic Speed only break away on a 6. Characters with Plasticity are a great way to tie up opposing characters, since it's so hard to get away from them. Purple movement is Force Blast. Force Blast grants the knockback key phrase, and you can be given a power action to knock back an opposing character up to 3 squares away from this character with a minimum range of 6. Pink movement is Sidestep. We looked at Sidestep in our first video. This allows you to give a character a free action to move them up to 2 squares. For as simple as this power may be, being able to sidestep a character out of danger or into a spot where they can attack is extremely valuable. Plus, Sidestep can be used to break away and leave adjacency. Bronze speed is Hypersonic Speed. For a power action, you can have your range, lose the ability to carry, and gain improved movement adjacent. From there, you can move up to your speed value, make an attack, and then continue moving up to your remaining speed. For instance, this Dark Flash has a speed value of 13, so he can move 7 squares, make an attack, then continue to remove up to the remaining 6 squares. Black speed is Stealth. If a character has Stealth, any hindered lines of fire drawn to them are considered blocked. Finally, we have Silver movement for Running Shot. Running Shot is the sister power to Charge. For a power action, half your speed, move, then make a ranged action as free. This is Charge but for ranged attacks. Since it grants a range action, you can use it to attack terrain, perform ranged object actions, or just use a power that requires a range action. Next, let's look at attack powers. As the name suggests, the vast majority of these offer unique ways to help you attack your opponents. Like, red attack is Blade's Claw's Fangs. With this power, when you hit with a close combat attack against a single target, instead of normal damage you may roll a d6, and your damage becomes a result, with the minimum being your printed damage minus 1. Depending on how good you roll your die, this power can let you deal 6 damage in a single attack. Orange attack is Energy Explosion. Give a character a range action and make a ranged attack. This attack targets the original target and all adjacent characters next to that target. This includes your own team. Any hit character is dealt 2 damage instead of normal damage. Note, because critical hits increase the damage dealt by 1, this would deal 3 damage to all hit characters instead of 2. We're going to skip over Pulse Wave and talk about light green attack, which is Quake. With Quake, when you make a close combat attack, you can choose to hit every adjacent opposing character, gaining the knockback key phrase, and dealing 2 damage to any hit target. It's strange to me how this is effectively a sister power to Energy Explosion, but Energy Explosion requires a range action, yet Quake doesn't require a close action. But I'm not going to complain, because this means Quake can combo with powers like Flurry. Down from here, we have the dark green attack, which is Super Strength. Super Strength gives the character the knockback key phrase during close combat attacks, and it also allows them to pick up heavy objects and use them for object actions. Light blue attack is Incapacitate. Incapacitate lets you give your opponent an action token instead of dealing damage. This can be a great way to slow down dangerous characters. Just remember that a character can never have more than 2 action tokens. Dark blue is Penetrating Psychic Blast. This power lets you deal penetrating damage for all of your ranged attacks. Purple attack is Smoke Cloud. It's similar to Barrier in a number of ways. Give a character a power action and place up to 6 hindering terrain markers. Any opposing characters who occupy these markers get a -1 penalty to their attack. But just like Barrier, each of these markers has to be adjacent to each other, and they're removed at the beginning of your next turn. Pink attack is Precision Strike. Precision Strike means that your damage cannot be reduced below 1, and you're more likely to hit someone with super senses as they get a -1 to their die roll. Bronze attack is Poison. Being near a character who's poisonous can be deadly. If a character hasn't been moved or placed this turn, they can be given a free action to deal 1 damage to all adjacent opposing characters. This can be a great way of dealing with characters who might have high defense but no damage reducers. Black attack is Steal Energy. When this character hits and damages 1 or more characters with a close combat attack, after resolutions, heal this character 1 click. Note that it doesn't matter how many characters you hit, you only heal once. Silver attack is Telekinesis. For a power action, you can move a friendly single-based character within range and line of fire, or an object, to another space within range and line of fire. The 2 squares that you move have to be within 6 squares of each other, and the target who you moved cannot use Telekinesis this turn. This is a great way to move characters onto equipment in 1 turn, boost a character so they can move further than they normally would be able to, or even reposition a character away from a dangerous enemy. Finally, let's talk about the yellow attack power, Pulse Wave. For the cost of a range action, you can half your range, gain improved targeting for characters, and you can make this attack even when adjacent to an opposing character. For this action, all other characters within range cannot use powers or abilities that they have. Make a range combat attack targeting every single character within range and line of fire, including your own. Hit characters are dealt 1 damage. Pulse Wave is a complex and scary ability. Effectively, your character explodes, and none of your opponent's powers can protect them from the attack. Pulse Wave only deals 1 damage to each character, but since it ignores every power that they have, it can be very effective. With those out of the way, there's only 1 category of powers left. Despite the name, damage powers don't actually improve your character's damage, but instead, damage powers offer a miscellaneous collection of abilities that you can use. Ironically, the first damage power does help you with your damage. Red damage, or Ranged Combat Expert, increases your attack and damage by +1 when you make a ranged combat attack or a ranged destroy action. Orange damage is the other power that some might see as negative, but most of the time, it's very positive. Battle Fury represents your character losing control and entering a blind fury. In this fury, they cannot be given ranged actions, they cannot be carried, and they cannot be given action tokens from opposing effects. They also get Safeguard Mind Control, which means they can't be targeted by mind control. Lastly, they ignore Shape Change, which is a power we'll get to in a bit. Next up
is the yellow damage or support. If you and an adjacent friendly character aren't next to any opposing characters, you can give this character a power action. You can then roll 2d6 and compare your attack plus your roll to your target's defense value. If your numbers are higher, then you can roll a d6 and heal the target equal to the result -2. While this acts like an attack, it's not, and you can't critically hit or miss. You might occasionally see support characters get paired with defend. For instance, this Scarlet Witch has a slightly subpar defense value with support and defend. She can replace a character's defense value with her own, making them easier to hit with support. Light green damage is exploit weakness. It's the sister power to Penetrating Psychic Blast, turning all of your close combat damage penetrating. Dark green is enhancement. Having enhancement boosts adjacent friendly characters' damage during ranged attacks or ranged destroy actions. Skipping around, we have pink empower. This is the melee equivalent of enhancement, granting +1 damage to adjacent allies during close attacks or close destroy actions. Dark blue damage is shape change. Shape change is my favorite power. When a character with shape change is targeted, roll a d6, and on a 5 through 6, they cannot be the target of that attack, and the attacker is allowed to choose another target. However, if there is no other legal target, the action immediately resolves and the attacker gains an action token. Remember that characters with Battle Fury ignore shape change. Purple damage is Close Combat Expert. As you might have guessed, this is the Close Combat sister to Ranged Combat Expert, granting a +1 to attack and damage for close combat attacks or close destroy actions. Bronze damage is Perplex. For a free action, you get a minimum range of 6 to choose any character within range and line of fire. You can give them a +1 or -1 to any one of their combat values except damage. Combat values refer to speed, attack, defense, and damage. Silver damage is Leadership. Just having leadership showing on anyone's dial gives you a +1 to your action total, but multiple leaderships don't grant multiple extra actions. At the beginning of your turn, you can roll a d6, and on a 5 or a 6, you can remove an action token from an adjacent friendly character who's less points or who shares a keyword with you. It's a lot like willpower, but for adjacent characters. Wrapping back around, we have light blue for probability control. With probability control, or prob, once per turn you can re-roll a target's attack or breakaway roll, but the target has to be within range and line of fire, with the minimum range value being 6. Prob is insanely valuable, and it lets you mitigate the random chance that Heroclix contains. It's so important, in fact, that if you're a theme team, all of your characters can use probability control once for each character on your team, up to a maximum of 3. This is called Theme Team Probability Control, and it's the second benefit of having a theme team. So if I have this Fantastic Four team that we've talked about before, because my theme team has 4 members, I'm allowed to use Theme Team Probability Control up to a maximum of 3 times this game. You can track how many uses you have left with a die or some token next to your character card. The final power is Black Damage, or Outwit. Outwit is a free action with a minimum range value of 6. That lets you choose an opposing character within range and line of fire. Then you can choose any standard power or special power that's printed on the character's card, and until your next turn, that character can't use that power. This allows you to negate any power your opponent has or will have. Do you want to prevent an opponent from regenerating next turn? Outwit it. Do you want to hurt a character with a damage reducer even though you only have 1 damage? Outwit. Are you scared of an opponent's special movement power? Outwit. Heck, outwit whatever powers equipment is giving them while you're at it. Did your opponent just outwit your defense power? Outwit their outwit. Have an outwitting match. See which team is the outwittiest. What I'm saying is that outwit is very powerful, and you should always be aware of what character has access to it. Finally, each slot might have a white box around it. These white powers are all special powers. You can find what a special power does on each character's card, and they're all unique. Now we can also talk about characters' traits. If your character has a star on their dial, they have a trait. Like special powers, traits are all unique and you can find them on a character's card. At this point, you should be able to crudely understand any traits you run across. Some traits are only active at certain point lines, and some traits are only active if you pay for them, but these are all pretty self-explanatory. Now that we're done with powers, let's talk about key phrases. Key phrases are extra named abilities that your characters will have. We've already discussed a variety of them, but now let's finish it off with a few that I think are important. If you hit a character with an attack and you have knockback, you can move the knocked back character up to 3 squares away.
stopping if you hit a wall, blocking terrain, another character, or fall down to a lower elevation. You also gain the knockback key phrase anytime your roll has doubles. Protected Outwit means that whatever power this is tied to cannot be the target of Outwit, and if you gained this ability after being outwitted, the Outwit effect immediately ends. Protected Pulse Wave. This means that a character can use the associated power during Pulse Wave. Great Size has this key phrase, because it would be funny if Pulse Wave suddenly caused your character to shrink. Safeguard Effect. This means that the entire character cannot be the target of the chosen effect. For instance, Battle Fury has Safeguard Mind Control, so that character can't be the target of Mind Control. If you see Safeguard Outwit, it means none of your character's powers can be targeted by Outwit. Unique Modifier. This means that no matter how many characters you have that share this ability, a single character can only benefit from it once. Stop. This is one of the most common effects you'll see. Referred to as stop clicks, when these clicks are revealed from an opponent's effect, you immediately stop turning the dial. The character with a stop click can still be healed, but they're healed one less with regeneration and support. Finally, you can find the effects your character's team abilities grant on their card. Team abilities aren't really a key phrase, but I didn't know where to put this bit. The very last thing we're going to talk about is the idea of golden and silver rules. These are the few niche rules in Heroclix that are extremely important, and you should always remember them. Replace, then modify. If any effect causes you to modify a value, and then another effect causes you to replace it, always replace, then modify. For instance, the Watcher perplexes Thor's speed value. Thor then uses Charge. First his movement of 10 is halved to 5, then it's modified by +1 up to 6. First turn immunity. Characters cannot be moved, placed, damaged, or targeted by opposing game elements until each player has finished their first turn, or until those characters have left their starting area. This means if some weird combination of powers lets me slingshot my Thor to my opponent's starting area on turn 1, I cannot attack them because they have first turn immunity. However, since my turn is over and Thor's out of his starting area, nothing is stopping them from attacking back. The Rule of 3. Finally, we have the Rule of 3. This rule says that the sum of any modifications is capped at +3 or -3. This means if I have 5 perplexes and boost Thor's attack, my opponent uses their 1 perplex to lower Thor's attack, 5 minus 1 is +4, which is more than 3, so Thor gets a +3 to his attack. And that's it! I've now covered every major rule in Heroclix. Congratulations for making it this far. Don't be put off if you didn't internalize everything all at once. It's a smart idea to try to learn about 4 to 5 powers a game, so if you didn't get everything right now, go ahead and open up the PAC and look over a few powers here and there, and slowly put it all together between multiple games. I'd also like to point out that I haven't taught you absolutely everything. There's still some more fringe topics, like rally dice, mission points, and roll tags that I haven't covered, but I'll leave you to discover those on your own. From here, you can begin your Heroclix journey. If you're unsure about where to start playing Heroclix, my next video is going to cover purchasing Heroclix, which will go over sets, boosters, the miniatures games, fast forces, organized play, and everything else that you might want to know when buying the game. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.